Oodalali, Lali, welcome. My name is DJ, aka Ferda Fangorn, and today I will be going into the Amethyst Inc. as we continue our series going over budget singles for Disney Lorcana. The parameters for the budget singles will be the same. There'll be nothing over $5 for a single copy, meaning a playset will cost you at the absolute most $20 market value. Every card will be rare, super rare, or legendary because every common and uncommon at this time is under that $5 limit. Also, this video will again be broken down into two separate sections, whereas the first section will feature what I call budget essentials. These are cards that are just essential to that ink color. They are staples in the game. Every deck that runs this color most likely features them, or it is heavily featured in a large percentage of those decks, and they're just universally really strong and good cards when you're using Amethyst. The second section will also be budget potential, just like in the Amber video. Some of them are staples that may have fallen down a little bit. Some of them are cards that are a lot of potential that may not have reached that potential yet and may find themselves moved up into that essential core category somewhere down the road. And then some of them are just really great cards that I think work in a budget minded frame, and that's why they are there. And with that, we are going to move into our cards. To begin this video going over Amethyst budget essentials, we are first going to be talking about Maleficent biding her time. She is a rare character from the first chapter. She is a one cost uninkable. She has one strength, one willpower, quest for two. Amethyst is kind of like Amber, where it is probably the most aggro friendly color as well. They're often paired together in the super aggro, hyper aggro builds. She is just like that Leela we talked about in the previous video. She is just a really strong way to start any game. She gets you two lore on turn two if she survives, which she usually does. She's just a very strong card and a great one to have, especially if you are building budget minded decks. Moving along, we have Madam Mim Fox from the Floodborn series. She is a three-cost inkable character, four strength, three willpower quests for one. She also has Rush, which means she can come right in a challenge the turn you play her. And with that four strength, she could take out just about anything she wants that you is available to be challenged on curve on that turn three, making her very, very strong. And she has that chasing the rabbit ability that is a quote unquote drawback. That when you play her, you must banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand. I say quote unquote because being able to put things back into your hand off the board can actually be extremely strong in this game. For example, just that Maleficent we just talked about, if you had her out and quested, leaving her vulnerable to being challenged, you could play this fox, return her safely to your hand, and then you're free to play her your next turn, or if you have the one ink left over, play her back readied and safe from any and all challenges. This card for a long time has been over $5. I think it just dipped below $5 not too long ago. I want to say it was just about a couple days ago. This card might be the most essential card in Amethyst, and it's definitely a debate that it could be argued it is one of the most essential cards, if not the most essential card in all of Lorcana. It's a very, very strong card. Its effect works for your benefit more often than not. Sure, occasionally you can't play her because you have nothing on board, but you can still ink her if she's stuck in your hand. So she is just really, really good. I think she's even creeped down closer to that $4 mark as opposed to being near the $5 mark. So if you do not have a playset of her yet, I recommend going and grabbing her right away because if you want to do anything at all with Amethyst, you're going to want this card. Moving along, we have another piece to what is commonly referred to as the bounce package that features Madame Mims and the Merlins in their various animal forms. There's a couple ones that are more essential. The snake Madame Mim and the Merlin goat we won't be talking about because they are uncommons, but those four cards, the rabbit, goat, fox, and snake, are referred to as the bounce package. They make up the core of I don't want to say every single Amethyst deck, but it sure feels that way. What the Rabbit does, he is a four cost uninkable rare character from Floodborn. He's got two strength, three willpower, one lore pip. The stats are not great, but we do not care. We want the card draw. We are here for card draw, and this guy does it well and better than arguably any other character. He has the hoppity hip ability where when you play this character and when he leaves play, you may draw a card, meaning that every single time you put this on the board, you are netting two cards by the time it leaves the board. It replaces itself and gives you at least one additional card. You can bounce it with a Mims and Snakes and activate that ability because it doesn't matter how it leaves play. It can leave play back to your hand. It can leave play into your deck. It can leave play into your discard or even into your inkwell. It does not matter. You are getting a card when he goes away from the board. Phenomenal card. Great way to generate some card resources in your hand at that mid game point when you're starting to turn into late game. Just really, really good. The whole bounce package is just phenomenal. Ton of fun to play. Kind of fun to watch your opponent use as well because there's always a little bit of different tricks here and there. Absolutely cannot recommend this card more. Moving on, we have another rare character from Floodborne. Now, this Pinocchio Star Attraction doesn't see as much play as he once did. He's very, very aggro-y. As you can see, he quests for 3 as a 2-cost uninkable with 1 strength, 1 willpower, similar to that Maleficent. No ability, but can get you a lot of lore quickly. And a lot of times, it doesn't really get to quests. People take care of it as fast as possible, which is also still good. It's almost like a shield to the rest of your board in a hyper aggro build. You don't see it as often as you used to, but I still think it's an essential card. It's a card you're going to want when you're building budget minded decks, and he's still really good to play with. And then moving on, we have another Floodborn character. This time it's Yzma, scary beyond all reason. She is a 6-cost inkable, super rare character from Floodborn. She has 4 strength, 4 willpower, and quests for 2. Decent stat line. She does shift for 4, albeit there's not really a great Yzma shift target at this moment. And the only time you're probably going to be shifting her is if you have this ink paired with Emerald and you happen to be running Morph, which is a card we will talk about in a different video. But she has the Cruel Irony ability, which is when you play this character, you shuffle another chosen character card into their player's deck. That player draws 2 cards. Now, this card has been errated, which means it has been changed a little bit. That is now a May ability. You don't have to do that ability on play, but it is nice to play her, and then you could just pick any character on board that you can choose and send it right into that person's deck. Sometimes you're desperate for the card draws, or you want to send something back into your deck and draw 2 cards. You can send that rabbit that we just talked about a little bit ago back into your deck, draw a card for his ability, draw 2 off of the Yzma. You can send a big scary character your opponent might have on board, or something that's just really a nuisance you want to get rid of. Removal is always nice to have. Amethyst, similar to Amber, doesn't have a ton of really strong direct removal. It's a lot more challenge based. So having this option is really, really good. She is similar to that Pinocchio. You don't really see her as often anymore, but she still has a mark on this game. It's still a card you should be aware of. But and again, like Pinocchio, in this budget minded series and budget minded decks we will be talking about, she will be a staple. Moving along is a card that probably belongs in the potential category, but I refuse to put him there. It is Jafar, Striking Illusionist. He is a legendary character from the Inkland set. He is 7 cost, inkable, 4 strength, 5 willpower, 1 lore pip. You can shift him on 5, which is the best way to really use this card because you want to be able to use that ability as soon as you play him before your opponent can stop you. He is evasive as well, which makes him harder to get rid of for your opponent. But where he really shines and where he really pops off is that power beyond measure ability that during your turn, while he is exerted, whenever you draw a card, you gain 1 lore. Card draw is essential. Every deck's going to feature as much of it as possible. The fact that you can get lore off of each card you draw when he's exerted is phenomenal. Yes, it's a little bit clunky at the moment. It can be kind of telegraphed because anytime you're playing a small Jafar that you want to shift this onto, your opponent's already aware that this is probably coming at some point in the game. They know it's probably in your deck. So it can be kind of a telegraph play. It's not a S tier deck just yet, but it's one of my favorite decks to play with is Jafar Wheel is what it's called in the community. It features a whole new world that's in steel. That's a whole different thing. But and I think as the game grows and grows, we're going to get more card draw every single set because you just have to. This card is just going to get better as time goes on. And right now, he is pretty affordable. I would not be shocked to see him spike at some point. Moving on to our first non character, it's a location, the Queen's Castle. This is another one that used to be a solid $8, $9 card. It was not budget friendly at all. With the emergence of the library coming out and the game getting a little bit faster, it has fallen into a little more fringy type of play, but it's still an essential card. It's a card you're definitely going to want because it's a very strong location. It's an inkable 4-cost location. It's rare from Inklands. It costs 1 ink to move a character there. That 7 willpower makes it pretty dang sticky. It gains you 2 lore on your set phase just for being on the board. And then it also has the ability using the mirror. At the start of your turn, for each character you have here, you may draw a card. So ideally, you play this card, move a couple of characters in there for that 1 ink cost. Not only are you getting 2 lore to start your turn, you're getting an additional card to draw at the beginning of your turn for each character there. It's a really good way to force your opponent to slow down because they really want to deal with this location. It's a very strong location. I love it a lot, and I cannot recommend it enough, just like a lot of these. And then the last card we're going to talk about for Amethyst staples and budget is Belle Accomplished Mystic. She is a super rare character from the Ursula's Return set. She is a 5-cost inkable character, 4 strength, 4 willpower, 2 lore pips, solid stats. She does shift on 3. Again, like the Yzma, there's not really a great target for her to shift, so you're not really doing that. But her ability, Enhanced Healing, lets you, when you play her, it lets you move up to 3 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. Meaning that when you put her down, if you have anything on your board with damage on it, you can move that damage onto one of your opponent's characters, hopefully being enough to banish it or putting it in range for something that wants to challenge to banish that character. You can even move damage from one of your opponent's character to another one of their characters and mess around with it that way. The moving the damage does get around the resistibility, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will see somewhere down the line. It's just a very strong ability to have. And not only are you doing a little bit of control and removal with this card, you now have a decently statted 2-quester. She is a very strong card. Now, this section of the video is a little bit shorter than the Amber version because Amethyst is one of the most budget friendly inks in the game, where a lot of the really good essential cards actually do fall into that common, uncommon category. And with that, we are going to move along into budget potentials. The first card we're going to talk about in budget potentials is my personal favorite Jafar to play to shift that big Jafar we talked about in the first part of this video is Jafar, Keeper of Secrets, a rare character from the first chapter. He is a 4-cost inkable Jafar, 0 strength, 5 willpower, quest for 2. I like it because you do play him on 4, meaning that the very next turn that big Jafar hits that shift 5 when you're inking to 5 ink. You can play it right on curve. I personally really love his Hidden Wonders ability. He gets +1 strength for each card you have in your hand. As you've seen, Amethyst loves card draw already, and in a deck featuring Jafars, you'll probably have a ton of card draw. So there's a good chance you're maintaining a decent sized hand, easily making him a 3, 4, 5 strength character on top of that 5 willpower, who also quests for 2. Getting him out of that range of some of the ruby removal that's based on strength. That 5 willpower is very hard to deal with, and he's helping you kind of get a bunch of lore at the same time if you don't shift him. I like it a lot. I love it in my Jafar decks. I think it's a great card. It has a lot of potential, in my opinion. Moving on is Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. He is essential to anybody wanting to build a Magic Brooms deck. It's a very popular archetype deck. It has some potential to be a good deck. It's not really seen super competitive. It's not the most consistent deck in the world, but it is a deck to be aware of. This Mickey Mouse pairs well with Magic Brooms. He's got Animate Broom ability, which lets you pay 1 less ink for each broom you play. And then he also has Ceaseless Worker, that whenever one of your brooms is banished in a challenge, you may return it to your hand, meaning you can challenge your brooms into something. They may both be banished, but that broom will come back safely to your hand. your opponent wants to get rid of one of your brooms, it'll come back to your hand if they challenged it and got rid of it. It's essential to any of those Magic Broom builds. It's got potential down the line. I'm sure we're going to get some more brooms at some point. It's a really good card. It's a really fun deck to play, and it's very budget friendly. Moving on is Arthur, Wizard's Apprentice. It is a super rare from the Floodborn set. He's a 3 cost uninkable, 1 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore pip. He was one that for a while was a staple, especially in any type of aggro build. Because of that ability he has, Student. Whenever he quests, you may return a chosen character of yours to your hand and gain 2 lore. So in an aggro build with maybe those Maleficents or Pinocchios, say you have the Pinocchio, you quest for 3 lore. You then quest with this Arthur, getting you another lore, that's 4. You choose to put Pinocchio back in your hand, that's 2 more lore. You've gained 6 lore. Yes, it takes some setup. There's a reason it's not as popular as it used to be, but I still think Arthur is a very strong card and a fun card to play with, and one I think it should still be in this potential section. Moving on is another pet card of mine. I don't really know how great it is. I think there will be a day where it's possible we see this card creep at some point up in price and up into maybe not necessarily the meta, but at a competitive level of some sort. That is Madam Mim Purple Dragon, 7 cost inkable legendary character from Floodborn, 5 strength, 7 willpower, 4 lore pips, and evasive. She also has the ability I win, which states that when you play her, similar to the fox, you must banish her unless you are able to return 2 chosen characters of yours to your hand. So it's harder to get her on the board. On turn 7, you might not be willing to sacrifice, 2 characters of board presence to get her down. But I do think there are decks you can build around this, maybe as a 1 or 2 of, get a lot of use out of some of the other cards in your deck that have on play abilities, or maybe cards you just want to protect actually requested. It's a fun card. I've used her a few times, and it's a really good time, and it does catch your opponents off guard. Another super rare from Floodborn, we are talking about Peter Pan's Shadow, not sewn on. It is a 4 cost uninkable character, 2 strength, 3 willpower, 2 lore pips. It has evasive and rush, which is a fun little combo. And then it has the tiptoe ability, which states that your characters with rush gain evasive, which gives things like that Madam M Fox the ability to go ahead and take out evasive characters that your opponent may have thought were safe. It's a fun way to kind of manipulate the board into your favor. You may run a deck with a lot of rush. Amethyst has a lot of rush characters. Ruby, a common pairing with Amethyst, also features a lot of rush characters. So this card has kind of bounced in and out as a tech card a lot from the higher end decks, but it's a really fun card to play around with. I like it a lot. I'm just a big fan of Evasive personally. Moving on, we have our first item in this video, the Sorcerer's Spellbook. 3 cost uninkable rare item from Floodborn with the knowledge ability that lets you exert it, pay 1 ink, and gain 1 lore. I would happily pay 1 lore every single 1 lore, 1 ink every single turn for 1 lore personally. Items do sometimes tend to slow you down a little bit to play because you can't really play them on curve a lot of times and use that ability. It used to be everywhere, especially in aggro decks. I still like to tech it in as a 1, maybe 2 of in aggro builds. Items are hard to get rid of. Anything that's generating lore as an item is phenomenal. I do wish it was inkable, but then it would just be, an insanely great card. I like it a lot. It's definitely one you're going to want key in on if you are building a budget friendly Amethyst deck. Another personal pet card of mine, a favorite of mine, is Genie's Supportive Friend. It's a super rare character from Inklings. It's 4 cost uninkable, 3 strength, 5 willpower, 1 lore. I like to run him in my Jafar decks. He generates good card draw with that 3 wishes ability that states whenever he quests, you may shuffle him back into your deck and draw 3 cards, meaning you're gaining a lore and 3 cards into your hand for the price of losing a character on board. I personally always like that trade. It's never really felt super bad to me. I think it's an underused card, and I always preferred it over other 4-drop options. In my Jafar decks, I even use it over Rabbit because being able to just get that instant 3 lore if you have a Jafar out, as opposed to having to manipulate the Rabbit, I like it a lot. I might be alone on this. I haven't really met anybody else who feels that way about this card that I do, but I just love it. It's a very affordable card. It's a lot of fun to play with. I do think there's potential for it, but who knows? Moving on, we have a rare character from that same England set. It is a one cost character, zero strength, two willpower, one lore pip. It is Rafiki, mystical fighter. He has challenger plus three, meaning that he has three challenge as a one drop on your turn. Sure, if you use him to take something out and he lives, he's not going to do any damage back when your opponent takes him out, but that's fine. Being able to put this down on the board is a major threat to anything your opponent's doing early in the game. This card used to also be everywhere. Amethyst gets a lot of really strong cards, so you do see a little lot more volatile in and out of the meta from this ink compared to other inks, in my opinion. But I still think it's a really, really good one drop. He is just a big presence. You have to play around him if your opponent has it on the board. It's a good card. He has the ability, Ancient Skills, that whenever he challenges a hyena character, he takes no damage in the challenge. It's not really prevalent. There's only one hyena that sees major play, and it'd be very, very techy to even worry about that hyena and play this card. Maybe we get more hyenas down the road and he becomes more prevalent. Who knows? I don't really see that coming, but I do think he is a one drop to be aware of. Moving on is we are talking about Ursula Sea Witch, a rare three cost uninkable character from Inklands, three strength, three willpower, quest for one. Decent stats, nothing crazy, but she has a You're Too Late ability that whenever she quests, chosen opposing character cannot ready at the start of their next turn. Meaning that she can kind of freeze a board for you, maybe buy a turn or two because your opponent doesn't want you to freeze something of theirs. She's kind of annoying. She is a bit of a techie card. I don't know exactly if you'd run more than maybe two or three of her, unless it's a very specific type of build you're going for. It's a lot of fun to play around with. I use her in a villains decks all the time when I make a fun villains theme. In fact, I'm pretty sure the villains deck I will be showcasing at some point after this series does feature her in it. It's a decent card. I think it has potential. I don't know how strong and great it is, but it's definitely one to be aware of. I have seen this played against me, and it has caught me off guard just about every single time, and it's put in some work. Moving along is a personal favorite of mine. The Boss is on a Roll is an action song card, three costs, inkable. It's rare from the Inklands chapter, and it lets you look at the top five cards of your deck. You could put any number of them on the top of your deck or the bottom of your deck in any order. Gain one lore as well when you have finished doing that. I've always been a fan of being able to look ahead and kind of stack my deck a little bit, send things away to the bottom that I might not want. So you use this card late in the game, you're getting a lore helping you kind of push to the finish line, and then maybe you pull out your top five cards. You got three one drops in there you no longer want to see. You could just send them right away. I used this card very strategically and successfully in my first set championships, where I was just one lore short of game three, going to the top eight in a 60 something person tournament. Nobody saw this card coming, but I was able to use this card to continually set up the card draw I was going to be doing with all my other Amethyst card draw options. It's a good card. I think it's a strong card. It's definitely very budget friendly. I don't know that it's super, super competitive or it'll ever make its way there, but I'm always a big fan of anything that really helps set up your game a turn or two in advance and is also gaining you lore at the same time. And it's a song, and we love songs. Now we are going to talk about Isabella Madrigal, Golden Child. She is a rare character from Ursula's Return. She is five costs, inkable, three strength, four willpower, one lore pip, and evasive. She has the Ladies First ability that states during your turn, if no other character has quested this turn, she gains three lore pips, meaning she will quest for four if nothing on your board has quested yet this turn. That is phenomenal. It's a fun way to get, a bunch of lore late in the game out of nowhere sometimes. But she does have the drawback, Leave It to Me, that states that whenever she quests, your other characters can't quest for the rest of the turn. So you want to make sure you have your turn figured out before you use that first ability of hers. Make sure you don't want to do any questing, or if it makes sense mathematically not to do any questing. But I really like the card. I like her as a top end in aggro decks. It's also really pretty. I just really like the artwork on it, and I think it's definitely a card that you can have fun with. Moving along is Peter Pan Shadow Finder. Very similar to that Peter Pan Shadow Not So Non we talked about. It is from the Ursa's Return set, a super rare 3 cost uninkable character, 2 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1. Also has Rush and Evasive. However, its ability fly, of course, is just the same as Shadow, but flip flopped, where your characters with Evasive gain Rush. Meaning, if you played something with Evasive, like maybe that big old Madam M dragon, when you play her and she has Rush and she can come and swing right away, I personally prefer the other one because evasive characters tend to be more fragile when it comes to stat lines. But I have seen this card used successfully. It's caught me off guard in some tournaments as well. It's a good card. It's a lot of fun to build around. I have built some fun, like little neat homebrew decks that feature both of the Peter Pans, and it's just a deck full of evasives and rush characters. It's a good card. It's definitely one worth checking out. Up next, we have a 10 cost song card. It is a rare card from Ursula's Return, second star to the right. It has Sing Together, thankfully, because otherwise this card would just be useless. You can use multiple characters to sing this card, and then chosen player draws 5 cards. I mean, unless it's like a very niche situation, you're always going to choose yourself. Drawing 5 cards is just fantastic, being able to do that. If you get this later in the game, you have a board with a couple of bigger characters out. You can easily sing this with just 2 characters. I like it a lot. I don't know exactly how consistent or reliable it will be, but in budget world, card draw is usually the hardest thing to make up for. Fortunately, Amethyst is very good at that, so I don't know if you run more than one of this in the deck just because of its cost, and it could feel really bad in your hand if you draw it any point early or middle of the game. Moving on is I want to say one of my favorite underused cards. I think this card has a lot of potential. I've used it successfully. It is a rare character from Shimmering Skies, Rafiki Shaman Duelist. He's a 4 cost uninkable character, 1 strength, 4 willpower, quest for 2. He has Rush, which might not seem great with a 1 strength character, but he has surprising skill that when you play this character, he gains Challenger +4 this turn, meaning the turn that you play him only, he gets that strength bonus and becomes a 5/4. So he could take out a lot of things as a 5/4 and survive with that 4 willpower. Then not only does he survive, yes, he becomes weaker, but now he's a 2 quester. So you've removed something and now you've got an aggressive quester on board. I like it a lot. No one really sees it coming. I've used him pretty well in some sealed events. If you happen to do a sealed event and see him, removal's kind of hard to come by. I would definitely grab it. It's a fun card. It looks cool, and that's about it I could say for Rafiki. Next up is Hades, Lord of the Dead. He is from Azurite Sea. He's a rare 6 cost uninkable character, 3 strength, 4 willpower, quest for 3. He has Soul Collector that states that during an opponent's turn, whenever one of your other characters is banished, you gain 2 lore. He really forces your opponent to deal with him if they want to do anything about anyone else on your board. And even if they don't, you still quest for 3 with him. It's really punishing. He does feel bad sometimes, and he normally gets taken care of pretty quickly because he comes out so late, and by then they have options. But it's a really good card, especially in aggro builds where you could flood the board with some aggressive low cost characters with him, and suddenly your board is just a major headache to deal with. Moving on is a card that I've actually seen starting to creep into some decks. I've looked at it a couple times. It's Madam Mim, Tiny Adversary. It's a rare character from Azurite Sea. 2 cost inkable, 0 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1. It has Challenger +1. It's not great on its own, but that Zim, Zabarim, Bim ability, your other characters gain Challenger +1. So every character on your board that's not her gain Challenger +1, making them all slightly stronger. They make them bigger attackers. I think there is a use for her somewhere. I don't know exactly where yet, but I do think she is worth talking about in this video. And moving on, we have the final card we're talking about in this one in the Amethyst budgets is Maleficent Staff. It is a rare item, again from Azurite Sea, 2 cost and inkable. It has the Back Fool's ability that states whenever one of your opponent's characters, items, or location is returned to their hand from play, you gain 1 lore. Meaning, if they happen to be running that bounce package that we talked about, that if they want to use that, you're gaining a lore for that. Maybe you're using stuff that sends stuff back to your opponent's hand. You're gaining a lore for doing that. I think this is a good way for mirror matches where you're playing someone else running the same ink as you, or the same deck type, to kind of get a little bit of an edge. Again, items do sometimes feel bad because they do slow you down sometimes, but I do think this is a fun card. I have a league mate that I play with, and she is building a deck around this card. It's a really fun deck to watch her play. It's good. I like it, and I do think it belongs in this video. It does have potential. And that will conclude this video on Lorcana budget singles from the Amethyst Inc. I really hope you enjoyed this video and are enjoying this series. If you are, and you did, please give me a like and a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. As always, I look forward to any and all feedback regarding either cards that I may have forgotten, cards that you think may not have belonged, or cards that you just were not expecting to see, and that maybe I made some good points and you see the card a little bit differently. I welcome all feedback. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to jump into the Emerald Ink on the next video. And thank you again for stopping by. Be love, be you, and God bless.